The Silent Awakening, How to Gain Non-Verbal Discernment, the Buddha. There's a passage where the Buddha says that if you want to master jhana and get really good at right concentration, you need both tranquility and insight. In other words, you don't just force the mind down. If you want the mind to be willing to settle down, you have to understand its causes and effects, what works, what doesn't work, remembering that the insights you use don't necessarily have to be verbalized. After all, think about it. Insight has to do with value judgments. What's worth doing, what's not worth doing? What gets good results, what doesn't get good results? Sometimes you know these things without having to verbalize too much. When you're cooking food, you know when something is done. If something is not quite right with the sauce or with whatever you're making, you have an idea of what needs to be done. And some of that's not very verbalized. When you taste it and it's just right, that's all you need to know, just right. You're done. You're ready. This is one of the reasons why Ajahn Lee often talks about meditation as being like a manual skill. The knowledge of a manual skill is often very unverbalized. When you're planing some wood, for example, your sense of what's just right, the right amount of pressure to put on the plane as you run it along, how deeply to cut, is not necessarily verbalized. You have a sense of what feels right. It's the same with settling the mind. Get a sense of what kind of breath feels right for settling the mind, where you want it focused, how broad you want your focus to be. Some people will verbalize this more than others, but the important thing is the skill. And remember, it took a Buddha to come up with the vocabulary that we use for our meditation. There have been a lot of people who gained full awakening, like the private Buddhas, who couldn't formulate the Dhamma. They sensed their way into awakening, recognized it when it came, but couldn't put it into words. Or you can look at the different forest ajahns. Some of them are people of very few words who don't explain much. Others are very articulate, but just because someone is articulate doesn't mean that his or her knowledge is better than someone who's not articulate. After all, freedom is not a matter of words. It comes from seeing things that you're doing for the sake of happiness, realizing that they're not getting the results you want, and thinking of other things you might do instead. That kind of value judgment is not necessarily verbalized, but it is discernment. As you work with the mind, try to get a sense of it. How much pressure you can put on it, how much pressure you put on the breath, so that you can stay with the breath, but you don't force the breath too much. If the pressure isn't right, the mind won't settle down. If there's too much pressure on the breath, you feel confined. If there's too little, you float away. So how can you stay with the breath consistently? And how can you keep the mind happy to be there consistently? The mind likes a lot of variety, and you have to train it to like being here in a very quiet place. It's like being a watchman in a forest. You're up in the watchtower alone. Some people go for that job simply because they like being alone. But after a while, they get hungry for human companionship. If someone comes to visit, though, you can't let your vigilance down. You have to keep an eye out on the horizon, all around, because if any fires get started, you want to see them right away. The more quickly you see them, the easier they are to put out. So you have to develop a skill. The skill of being quiet and being happy to be quiet. You can play around with the breath, but then as the breath gets more and more subtle, there comes a point where if you really want to get the mind to settle down, you have to stop playing and just be with an all-around sense of the body, very much one with the breath. Fortunately, The breath gives you a reward when you do that. A strong sense of pleasure goes along with that. Some people even sense it as rapture. At the very least, it's refreshment. But then that too begins to seem gross and falls away. You have to keep training the mind. This is a good place to stay. It's good to stay here. Why do you want to go anyplace else? Why are you looking for trouble? Learn how to appreciate a concentrated mind. Have respect for concentration. You tell yourself that you want well-being, yet when it comes, you get bored. Ask yourself, what's wrong with the well-being? It will, of course, have its drawbacks. After all, concentration is not perfect, but to get beyond it, you have to know it well, to sense its slight ups and downs. Here again, it's not so much an issue of verbalizing. Just notice. When does the stress go up? When does it go down? When it goes up, what did you do? What perception came? What feeling came in? When the stress level goes down, what perception did you let go of? Those are things that you feel your way into. As Ajahn Mahabhuva points out, when you see something that's not worth holding on to, it doesn't matter whether you tell yourself it's inconstant, stressful, or not self, or don't say any of those things. You just have a sense, this isn't worth it, and you let go. That's where the real discernment lies. The terms, the perceptions, are simply aids to help convince you that this is something you really don't want to go with, no matter how much you've liked it in the past. But if, for whatever other reason, you notice that it's just not worth it and you let go, that counts as discernment too. Kuwa, part of our problem is that we understand knowledge as having to be in words. This is reflected in the history of Western philosophy. Philosophers very quickly get into questions of what they call epistemology, the study of how we know things. And the basic paradigm for this approach is how we look at things, realizing that we formulate a lot of assumptions about them in order to deal with them. After all, your visual field is your most active sensory field. There's a lot of verbalization that goes on simply in trying to figure out if you see something. Is it true or is it not true? Is it a mirage? How do you test? Whereas in Indian thought, especially prior to the Buddha, the basic paradigm was not the act of looking at something. It was the act of eating. This, they said, was the basic function of a human being, of any being, eating. The Buddha himself said that this was what we all have in common. All beings need to feed. When you're eating something, it's not a question of whether that thing exists or not. The fact that it's filling you up, that's fulfilling a function. The questions, is it healthy for you? And will it be good for you in the long term? Those are a different series of questions, and questions like that don't have to be verbalized so much. Part of the issue revolves around whether the food tastes good or doesn't taste good. Even if you don't verbalize it beyond saying, this is horrible, you spit it out. With other things, you have to be more careful. Something may taste good, but it may not be good for you. That's a whole different set of questions. But remember, a lot of eating is non-verbal, and yet a great deal of discernment goes into what you should and should not eat. What this gets down to is what the Romans called the difference between scribe knowledge and warrior knowledge. Scribe knowledge had to be expressed in words. It was a matter of definitions. Warrior knowledge was simply a matter of knowing your skills, knowing your weapon, knowing your enemy, and as you know a weapon, know an enemy, or know your horse or your other aids as you fight. Sometimes you have a sense that your horse needs to rest. Well, how do you say that to yourself? You just know. Sometimes you get a sense of how to use your weapons. You get a sense of what your opponent is like. Often, this sense is not verbalized, but it counts as knowledge. Even if the only war that you're engaged in is doing battle with food in the kitchen, it's the same sort of thing. You get a piece of food. What do you do with it? How does it need to be prepared until it's done? When it's done, how do you know it's done? You have a sense. It's the same with the mind. Have a sense of when it's ready to settle down. Have a sense of when it's beginning to get unsettled. That kind of knowledge deals with cause and effect. Which causes are worth going with, which ones are not. Based on the effects, that's where the insight lies. Tranquility, insight, and concentration. Take a couple of good, long, deep in and out breaths and notice where you feel the breathing process in the body. It might be at the nose, the base of the throat, the chest, the abdomen, wherever it's clearest, that now the breath is going in, now the breath is going out. Focus your attention there. Then ask yourself if long breathing is comfortable. If it is, keep it up. If not, you can change. You could try shorter breathing, or in short, out long, in long, out short, fast, slow, heavy, light, deep or shallow. Try to find what rhythm and texture feels best for the body right now. As for any thoughts that come into the mind, you don't have to pay them any attention. Just pay attention to the thoughts about the breath, because you will have to think about the breath as you're investigating how it feels and how it might feel better. Then, when you have a rhythm of breathing that feels good, maintain it as long as it feels good. If after a while it doesn't feel so good anymore, you can change again. This is the nice thing about concentration practice. You're here to find an object that the mind likes, and then you want to stay with it. To keep on liking it, you may have to make some adjustments. But then, when there's a feeling of well-being in the breath, think of it not being confined only to the spot where you're focused. Think of it spreading out. If you want, you can move your focus around different parts of the body. Start down around the navel. Watch that area of the body as you breathe in, breathe out, and if there's any sense of tension or tightness there, think of it relaxing. Then move up to the solar plexus, the middle of the chest, base of the throat, middle of the head, then down the shoulders, starting at the back of the neck, going down the back, through the hips, out through the legs. Focus, relax. You can make this survey a couple times and then see if you can focus your attention in one spot of the body and then spread your awareness so that it fills the whole body, so that you have a sense that the whole body's breathing in and you're aware throughout the whole body. The whole body is breathing out and you're still aware of the whole body. Don't let your awareness shrink as you breathe out. Let the breath find whatever rhythm feels best. These are the basic steps in right concentration. This is the central practice the Buddha taught. His instructions are contained both in the section on right mindfulness and right concentration. As he said, the themes of right concentration are the 4 establishings of mindfulness. For example, the body. Keep focused on the body in and of itself, ardent, alert, mindful, putting aside greed and distress with reference to the world. That's his description for how you get the mind into concentration. You focus on one topic, keep it in mind. That's mindfulness. You're alert to what you're doing and the results that you're getting. And as for ardency, you try to do this well. That's the wisdom factor here. In trying to do it well, you're trying to master this as a skill. As for any thoughts of the world outside, what the Buddha puts under the categories of greed and distress. Just put those aside. Then as you stay here, the mind settles down with a sense of well-being. When the Buddha would tell people to go meditate, he'd say, go do Jhana. He never said, go do Samatha or go do Vipassana. Basically, he'd say, go get the mind settled in concentration. But he also said that in order to get the mind into concentration, you have to develop two qualities, which were tranquility and insight. Samatha and Vipassana. Try to keep the mind calm and at the same time gain insight into the workings of the mind. That's what Vipassana is all about. Seeing sankharas, fabrications. See how they arise. See how they pass away. See what makes them arise. If you go for something that's not skillful, the question is, well, why? What's the allure? Then you look for the drawbacks. In this case, as you're trying to get the mind to settle down, you do want to see the mind in concentration in terms of sankharas, because concentration is something you put together. But for the time being, you're not going to be looking for the drawbacks. You're focusing more on the allure. You want to look for the drawbacks of anything that would pull you away. A thought comes in. If you can just ignore it, fine. Come back to the breath. If for some reason it becomes obsessive, then you have to turn and look at it. Okay, why would the mind go for this? What does it like about it? Sometimes it'll lie to itself about the reason. Sometimes it'll tell the truth. But when you can see the allure, and you can see then the drawbacks of following that allure, then you can develop dispassion for it and can put it aside. That's the insight side of getting the mind into concentration. As for the tranquility side, working with the breath as we were working just now soothes the body, soothes the mind, and gives you a good place to settle in. You want to feel that you're in a place where you're stable, with a broad sense of awareness, so that the mind doesn't feel confined. You want to be aware of the whole body breathing in, the whole body breathing out, thinking of the breath energies flowing through the nerves, flowing through the blood vessels, as all flowing in coordination, so that this is a good place to stay. So to get the mind into concentration requires some insight, and it requires some tranquility. Not only insight into the distractions, but also insight into what you're doing. You realize that you have to have a perception in mind, an image in mind that you hold, of how the breath comes in, how it goes out. There are different images you can use, some of which will be more conducive to a sense of ease and well-being than others. You experiment to find out which are which, and you have to talk to yourself, especially in the beginning. After a while, when the mind really settles in, then you can put the internal conversation aside, but you still have the sankhara of the breath, and the sankhara of the perception, and the feeling, of course, the feeling of well-being. It's all right here, but for the time being, you're trying to nurture these fabrications to create the path. As the Buddha said, the highest of all fabricated dhammas is the Noble Eightfold Path, and the heart of that path is right concentration. So it is something you put together, and you try to do it well. If there's any disturbance in the mind, ask yourself, is it coming from within or without? Things coming from outside, you're going to let go. If it's a disturbance from within, you want to let that go as well. But sometimes it requires some understanding. This is where you bring in some more insight. Why would you hold on to that disturbance? As you let go in this way, through understanding, the mind settles down to deeper and deeper levels. And of course, As the mind gets more quiet, your insight gets sharper as well. So all these processes, tranquility, insight, right concentration, go together. They form a unified path. The more you can keep things together like this, the more settled the mind will feel, the more at ease, the more grounded. This will be an important ally as you get deeper and deeper into the mind, because you begin to gain some insights into parts of the mind that you've hidden from yourself, and part of you may feel threatened. You don't like seeing yourself in that light, because you're going to be seeing your greed, you're going to be seeing your anger, you're going to be seeing a lot of your petty emotions, and you want to not be bowled over by them. This is why you want the sense of deep well-being that comes from concentration. It's as if it lowers your center of gravity so that you're not easily tipped over by things. So the concentration is essential. As for developing tranquility and insight, it's going to be a matter of leaning in one direction and then leaning in the other in terms of the questions you ask. As the Buddha said, to foster tranquility, you ask questions along the lines of, what can be done to get the mind to settle down, to achieve unification, to really indulge in this sense of being at ease with a sense of oneness? As for insight, it's more a question of figuring out, what's the fabrication going on here in the mind, and how to view that in a way that's helpful for developing the path, and then for letting go of anything that gets in the way of the path. So, as you work with the breath, sometimes you'll be leaning toward insight, sometimes you'll be leaning toward tranquility. The Buddha gave 16 steps in all for breath meditation, and the general pattern throughout the steps is that you see how things are fabricated in terms of the body, in terms of the mind. You learn how to energize that fabrication, and then you calm it down. Seeing in terms of fabrication, that's the insight. The calming is tranquility. It all goes together. Now, for some people, there will be more of an emphasis in the beginning on insight. Others will have more of an emphasis on tranquility. Others will be developing the two together. But you need both to get the mind into concentration. And then the concentration provides the basis from which both of these qualities can develop even further. It's a practice where everything comes together right here. So bring your full attention right here. Anything that would pull you away, you don't have to get involved with at the moment. No matter what duties and responsibilities you have in the world, you do have this duty to your mind. All too often, we let the duties of the world get in the way because other people push them on us, and they seem very pressing and urgent. But you have to remember, the well-being of your mind is your most important priority, because only if the mind is in good shape can handle other responsibilities well. So make sure that you take the time every day, to look after this most important responsibility. And learn to find some joy in doing it too. As you work with the breath energy, you'll find that there are knots of tension in different parts of the body. If you're patient and get more sensitive to the breath, you find that you begin to untie those knots, and a sense of well-being goes deep inside, something that no outside activity can provide. It's a state of genuine well-being, and this is just the path, to say nothing of the goal. This is why the Buddha said, his teaching is good in the beginning, good in the middle, good in the end. The words of the teaching are good. They're inspiring. The actual practice gives a deep sense of well-being. And the goal is even better still.